Welcome to Roads Less Traveled, the podcast where real estate, rail trails, and bike tourism meet. I'm Craig Della Penna. I'm a realtor with a passion for turning former railroad corridors to thriving trails and communities. If you're curious about buying homes near these trails, starting a bed and breakfast, or simply want to learn about the incredible opportunities along these greenways, you're in the right place. Every 2 weeks, I'll share stories, expert advice, and conversations with guests who know the ins and outs of rail-to-trail living and tourism. Ready to explore a unique slice of real estate and adventure? Let's hit the trail. Today, we have Kristen Sykes, a conservationist, organic farmer, and advocate for biking and pedestrian infrastructure. She has been actively involved in advancing sustainable land use, active transportation, and community-based environmental initiatives. Through her work in conservation and agriculture, Kristen promotes healthier ecosystems and resilient local communities while championing safe, accessible mobility options for all. Thanks for joining me today here, Kristen. This is great.
Thanks for having me, Craig.
Let's talk about some close to home recreation. Here's a few things to think about here. Why local access to trails and farms is vital for communities, and how close to home recreation impacts community health and connection, and maybe some examples of recreational spaces that bring people together. What do you think?
Sure. Thanks, Craig. We are in an incredible area for people to be able to experience local food, local outdoors opportunities. We're in the Silvio Conti Fish and Wildlife Refuge and the Connecticut River. We have a massive bike network in addition to other municipal protected lands. Land trust. Massachusetts has the most amount of land trust in the whole country. And so we have tremendous opportunities for people to get outdoors whether they want a more rugged experience to go hike on the Holyoke Range, or they want to take their bike on the Mass Central Rail Trail, or put their kayak in on the Connecticut River. So we have lots of opportunities to get outside. And as you mentioned, I'm a farmer, and my husband and I have a small 8.5-acre farm in the Northampton Meadows that is accessible by all forms of public transit. You can get there by bus, you can walk, you can bike, you can fly a plane. We're right by the airport. You can get an Uber. We've had students walk from UMass. And so it's really easy for people to ride their bikes out to the farm. We are organic. We use organic practices. And they have this amazing opportunity to be able to pick organic blueberries. Right now, we're in our time of flowers and dahlias. Folks can ride their bikes or walk or drive out to the farm. And not only do they get to pick flowers or pick fruit, but we have a stunning view of the Holyoke Range with the Summit House right from the farm. It's incredible, especially at this time of year where you have the twilight golden hour and the evening light. A couple nights ago, we were treated to an incredible sunset. And if you time it, the Summit House, a little white house on the Holyoke Range, many people don't even know what that is, and we're able to chat with them a little bit about that. It's even pink and with the golden sunlight. Wow. So you have a huge opportunity because we're organic. We are abuzz in butterflies. We've got monarch butterflies. We've got crickets. So when you're in the flowers, it's literally buzzing with all the wildlife that is there. And we also have an aesthetic that is very natural. We're low infrastructure, so you can wander around the fields. This year, we added a few little fun things to the dahlia field where we planted some giant pumpkins. So you're walking around the flowers, and then you see this huge orange patch in the field, and it's a giant pumpkin, and we have gourds. And so people have an incredible experience at the farm, in addition to what they either consume, the blueberries, or they bring home, like the flowers that they get to enjoy for several days after. And the best thing is that we're in Northampton, we're part of the city, and you can easily get to it, whether you have a car or whether, you're using public transportation.
That's great. Tell me about the importance of bike ped infrastructure, why investing in biking is something that matters, and how communities can benefit economically and socially from that.
Sure, people have been riding bikes and walking to get to their destination for centuries, whether it is for their job or for recreation or pleasure. It's really essential for us to be able to have systems so that people can get around without a car. Sometimes people choose to not have a car. Sometimes it's a financial reason. Where I live in Holyoke, more than 20% of the population doesn't have a car, so they use other means to get around. So we want to make sure that we have a good system, just like we work on with our highways and roads, make sure we have a good system so that people can take public transit, that they can be able to get around, whether, again, it's to their job, to school, or for recreation, safe way. So there's been some great things that have happened in Massachusetts. A few years ago, Massachusetts was ranked as the most bike-friendly state in the country by the League of American Bicyclists. And even since that designation happened, we've had some great improvements, like the Act to Reduce Traffic Fatalities that was passed into law a few years ago that provides some guidance on vulnerable road users. It also now implements a 4-foot passing law that automobiles need to give a 4-foot width of when they're passing people on their bike. And so we want to make sure that anyone, no matter their economics, their reasons for not having a car, that they are able to get around. And another huge point is we have an aging population. And so we want to make sure that folks can safely walk to where they need to get to, whether they're walking from the senior center to get to the CVS, which is right where I am, or if they want to ride their bike for fitness. We want to make sure that, or families, a lot of people go out and ride their bikes with their families, or kids are riding their bikes to be able to get to school. We want to make sure that everyone has a safe opportunity. And the best thing about creating safe infrastructure for people who are biking and walking, and also this vulnerable road users law, is it also benefits cars. And so it also enables automobiles to be able to safely traverse neighborhoods and other congested areas so that we can all share the road, whether it's a walker, a biker, or someone who's driving.
That's great. You reminded me some things there. But what are some of the challenges and opportunities in expanding these safe pathways? What do you think the challenges are?
Some of the challenges can be change. Oftentimes it can be challenging for folks for change. These projects can take a few years or more than that, depending on the initial concept of the project till when you get it approved and then the money and then it actually gets built. So it can take a long time. The construction can take a long time. We know in where we've seen some roundabouts put in, such as the one on Damon Road that's close to the Norwottuck network and the Coolidge Bridge, and that's a place where there's a lot of traffic, that people needed to get used to the new traffic patterns, the new signs. It takes a while for people to get used to that. There's a lot of proof at the end of the day that there are smart people working on these projects and that they do bear fruit, and it does make it easier for everyone to get around, whether they're a walker or a biker. The opportunity is tremendous. I've done a lot of work on accessible trails, and so making sure that we have trails that are utilized by people with all abilities. And the best thing about that is when you make a trail more accessible to folks who may have mobility challenges, it means everyone gets to use it. And so when we make these infrastructure changes, they benefit everyone. So there's some great opportunities there. And then when we're reducing people's carbon footprint, then we're also helping with clean air, with potential disruptions that we might have from extreme weather events. We had flooding a few years ago. We had flooding this winter. And so the more that we can do to provide opportunities for folks to get around, that is better for the environment in addition to their health. So there's tremendous opportunities. And then I'll just say, and I'm sure you feel the same way, Craig, that whether I'm riding my bike for commuting or for recreation, that I love every moment on my bike. It's such a joy. I love every minute that I have that I'm able to walk. And I have a day job when I'm not at the farm. that involves sitting sometimes for long lengths in front of a computer. And even if I just go out and walk around the block, I instantly feel better, whether it's in the middle of winter or it's a beautiful fall day. So there's just a lot of health benefits physically and mentally to using your body and to walking or biking. And then there's also the independence factor too, to be able to really have that independence, be able to get where you need to go.
You mentioned earlier about the roundabout by the Route 9 bridge to Hadley. There's a couple of other roundabouts as in Northampton, and the earliest one was the one near Look Park. And that was such a newfangled idea, let's say, that when it got proposed, Mass DOT knew that they didn't have experts on staff way back then on how to do this and what the pluses and minuses are of having a roundabout versus other options. So they called in New York State DOT to be part of the conversation there to be able to clearly explain what is a roundabout versus a rotary. Everybody in Massachusetts, or actually in the country, knows about Massachusetts rotaries, which are like NASCAR tracks. But the roundabout is much smaller and it's 15 miles an hour rather than 50 miles an hour. So the people love roundabouts today. So it's funny that, yeah, you're right. This is all good. The supporting local businesses, the role of local farms and small businesses in building resilient economies. Let's talk about that and how trail systems and farms intersect with economic development and ways to strengthen that community ties through supporting these local enterprises. I know that you see it firsthand there. So tell me about that, Kristen.
Sure. It's interesting when we think about the farm because it is an independently owned farm that we have a private entity. I will mention it is on preserved land as the state of Massachusetts sold the development rights. So it can never be developed. It's also part of the floodplain. But the state and the landowner who actually sold those development rights made it possible for us to be able to farm this land. So let's start with that. We have the state of Massachusetts commitment to wanting to protect farmland. And here's farmland that's protected amidst a city or a town close to lots of population centers. And so here we have a farm that people can easily access. And then the opportunity for people to come and support local farmers, local food, and then nourish themselves with that local food. And we intentionally make our prices equitable so that everyone has access to local food. For people to have that connection to a local farm that's part of their community, a lot of people that come to the farm are friends or become friends. It's really a community gathering place. Yesterday was Mountain Day for Smith, and so a lot of students went and participated in that, and then several of them came to the farm afterwards to pick flowers. And at the same time, we had students there from Smith. We had a professor who's a regular of ours who was also picking flowers. We see a lot of people that are in the field who run into each other and their friends and neighbors. And especially, I will say, we were open during the beginning of the pandemic and throughout the whole pandemic. And that was just incredible for people to be able to leave their houses, to be out in the field, to be out in nature. And especially now when there's a lot happening in the world, for people to be able to come to the farm, it's so beautiful. We have a little secret garden path now that people walk to be able to get to it. And so 100% for people to be able to support local businesses. And I'm sure you feel the same way as a small business owner, Craig, that it just feels really good to support local businesses, to get to know the people who own the business, the people who work there, to feel like you're spending money that goes back into the economy. And I will say for myself and for my husband and partner, Farmer Fred, that we, on the weekends when we're not at the farm, we go to other local businesses. We went and picked apples at Park Hill Orchard. We went to Carr Cider House to have some local cider. We ourselves like to visit small local businesses. We went out to dinner after the farm day to go have dinner at Paul and Elizabeth. And Paul and Elizabeth have been long-term supporters of ours as well. And so we love to support that. I know there's been a lot in the news about the local craft beer industry, and we love to support local farmers. One of our first farm customers on the farm when we first opened was a brewery in Shelburne Falls, Floodwater, and they actually used our strawberries in their beer. And so,
Wow.
yep, they were our very first customer. And I'm a big craft beer enjoyer, as is Farmer Fred. So 100%, it's keeping local businesses operating. It's a gathering place. It makes it feel good to know like where your dollars are being spent.
What's your favorite thing about owning a local farm?
I would say it's the community. It's the people that we get to meet. People come to our farm from Northampton, from Springfield, from Boston, New Hampshire, Vermont. Sometimes, especially when people are on vacation in the summer, we're right off of 91. We have folks that have headed up from the Mid-Atlantic or from New York City. They want to stretch their legs, go pick some blueberries while they're on their way to spend some time in New England. So it's really the people, especially now with all the dahlias we have. We have close to 100 varieties, and people come out there and the joy that they feel, then we feel that same joy. And so really the best part is being able to have the secret little hidden gem that we like to call it, and even our secret garden, that the joy that people have in being at the farm is probably really one of the best things. And knowing that we're providing a community service, if you will, for people to come and have a beautiful place to spend their time, whether they're just looking at the flowers or they're cutting them and bringing them home.
That's great. What's your favorite bike ride on and off trail?
I would say my favorite bike ride is I do really enjoy actually I can bike from my house in Holyoke, so I can just leave, and I have actually been biking all the way from my house to the farm. Sometimes if I'm feeling really adventurous, I'll go all the way to Belchertown. So I did do a 32-mile ride. I left Holyoke. I got biked down Route 5 by the dinosaur footprints, got on the Manhan Rail Trail, connected up with the Nordic Network, biked all the way to Belchertown, and then came back and then biked to the farm. So that was like a really great ride that I was able to do. And then I'll say an on-road one that I really enjoy, which I can also get to from the farm, is to bike up to Conway. So I love riding on the rail trail, going past your B&B there, getting onto North Farms Road. It's a little bit of a hill right there, and then you get to bike along the reservoir and then head up to the West Whately Chapel. So that's probably one of my other favorite rides that I love to do. And then, like I said, if I'm feeling really ambitious, going all the way to Conway and riding past the reservoir right there. And you just get to do such a good mix of rail trail, farms, nature areas. It's pretty great.
Here's a good backstory to that ride from your house on Route 5 up to Northampton. The Route 5 along the Connecticut River on the north side of Holyoke has their now default bike lanes.
Right.
The reason they got that is an unusual circumstance. Back in the 1930s, early 30s, there was a trolley right-of-way in the center of Route 5 there, with a northbound track and a southbound track, and the automobile layout was way out on the outer reaches of the road. And then the trolley went away, as they did everywhere in the country. And then they repaved the road. To pull out the track, they repaved the road. So the road layout then with the center yellow line, the road automobile layout is now very close to the center with wide shoulders. And back in the late 90s, I was the co-chair of Mass DOT, or they were called Mass Highway back then, of their bike ped task force. And we proposed that they should make the outer lanes of that Route 5 in Holyoke into bike lanes. And they said that's when the Transportation Secretariat in Massachusetts was a 20th century organization, not today's 21st century version. They said, oh, we can't do that. It would not make the federal standards for a bike lane. And so we said, okay, sorry. And then a few years later, I think it was around 20 years ago now, around 2005, one day they just announced that they were going to repave the road and then restripe it with bike lanes on the outer 8 feet or 10 feet of the road layout. We were all shocked. And then they
Mhm.
put nice big biking lane signs and paint, and that's when we knew that Mass DOT had evolved into the 21st century.
Yes. One thing I
And
do look forward to, Craig, in a future time is I will go on Route 5 and bike along the Connecticut River. And then now there's a crosswalk that you can get to since there's a Dunkin' Donuts there. So you can actually stop traffic and you can get across, which is excellent. And then you can get on the Manhattan, and I love hopping on the rail trail there. And it would also be fantastic to be able to keep going and go by the Oxbow, but right now it's so narrow right there
mm,
and the traffic goes pretty fast. So I
yes,
know that a lot of
doesn't
folks,
feel
that would
safe.
honestly make it a lot easier for folks to be able to commute. And I do drive that road a lot, being able to get from home to the farm, see a lot of cyclists or bike riders that it's a little tricky right now with heavy traffic going pretty fast speeds to be able to get through that little narrow bit right there. So that would
Right.
be an amazing amenity in the future to make it easier to ride from Northampton to Holyoke, just right on the
Yes.
road.
Here's a good question that ties in with your farm. What inspires your advocacy for sustainable land use?
So lands provide so many benefits to people and for wildlife and pollinators. And it's amazing to be able to have these amenities where we live. A lot of communities have a nature deficit or they don't have access.
Mm,
They have a lot of pavement, they may not have a lot of street trees. I have a pocket park right across the street from my house, and that
right.
is used all time of year. I can hear kids on those swings all the
Yep.
time. So it's really essential for people to be able to have access to nature in communities. I love traveling and going to nature spots all over the world, quite frankly, and taking my bike too. But it's so essential to be able to have those nature spaces for folks to get to. And then, of course, they provide so many other benefits, whether it's for birds, for bees, for wildlife, being able to have nature spaces that can absorb the rain when we have major flood events. And one thing that we think about a lot at the farm is our soil compaction, making sure that the soil isn't highly compacted. So if we do have extreme weather events like the flooding a few years ago. And so it's so essential to be able to have these nature spaces for wildlife, for clean water benefits, for people to be able to access. And I know that there are several land trusts and even the state and the federal government through the Silvio Conte Fish and Wildlife Refuge that are making sure that these places exist. And this is one thing that we really love about the farm is that it gives people an opportunity to spend time out in nature. And there's a lot of literature that shows how important nature is for people, for their mental health and for their physical health. So it's really essential. And as we know, farmland is dwindling in the state. Nature spaces are at a premium. During the pandemic, so many people wanted to get outside that some places had a lot more visitors. And so it really, I think, made people aware of the fact that a lot of people want to get outside and we want to have a lot of nature spaces for people to be able to get outdoors.
This begs the question for me here. Were there pivotal moments or mentors who influenced you in this journey?
I would say one person that was a mentor to me was Andy Fallender, who was the longtime head of the Appalachian Mountain Club.
Yes,
And
yeah.
I worked for the Appalachian Mountain Club for over 18 years. I worked on our Mid-Atlantic office and then also in Boston and Western Massachusetts. And some of my projects I worked on were a long distance hiking and biking trail in the Boston suburbs, the Bay Circuit Trail and Greenway. I worked on helping create campsites on the Connecticut River for people to be able to paddle and have free places to camp. And so Andy was really helpful to me in his leadership style. He really promoted the staff and really gave people opportunities to become experts in their particular field. And then also working at the Appalachian Mountain Club, because I've done a lot of work lobbying Congress and local legislators and talking to foundations, et cetera, about the importance of protecting land and getting people outdoors. But the best way for people to become advocates of outdoor spaces is for them to experience it, for them to have connections, for them to have memories related to that place. And so I would say that Andy is one of those folks, and one person who's really the most important person and mentor for me in this journey is my dad, John Sykes. When I was a kid, my dad took my brother and I camping and hiking all over the country.
Wow.
And so we got to camp outside. He used to make us sandwiches that were English muffins that were toasted over the fire with cheese whiz and Spam. I've since learned that you can eat better even if you're backpacking, but he's a Spam diehard. I think being able to have those experiences when I was a younger person, and then as an adult, I've been able to share those experiences with family. In my time at the Appalachian Mountain Club, I used to take my nieces up to the White Mountain Huts. And one of my nieces, the first mountain that she ever climbed in her life was Mount Washington. And it was exactly the experience you would
The
think.
first mountain she ever climbed?
First mountain she ever climbed was Mount Washington. And of course, it's exactly as you would expect. It was August when we were down in the valley. It was sunny and a beautiful day, but we brought our rain gear, we brought our rain hats. You know, we climbed up the mountain, Tuckerman Ravine. And as we were there, it started to rain. And then by the time we got to the Mount Washington Observatory, we were all bundled up in our hats and our rain jackets because it was pouring rain and it was 40 degrees. And there were people walking around up there in flip-flops and shorts that have driven their car. And then you wonder about all those cairns, the rocks, and especially when you're up in the White Mountains, a place like that, they're so close to each other. And you understand why they're so close to each other, because when it's foggy and you're trying to make your way to the Lakes of the Clouds hut where we were staying that night, thankfully I had a place to stay that night where we could get dry and hang up our clothes around the fire, is those were essential to us so that we could make our way. And being able to have these amazing experiences with my nieces who are really into the outdoors themselves was just such a huge opportunity.
How old were you all then?
Gosh, I think that my niece might have been probably around 10. So she was a young hiker, and we were actually hiking with a friend and her even younger daughter. So there we were, Tuckerman's Ravine, in the middle of a rainstorm, trying to get up to the top of Mount Washington.
But you were professional grade. You knew to carry all that extra gear because you knew what lays ahead up on top of the mountain. So you
Exactly. And this is one thing, whether you're biking or walking in your neighborhood or you're on a backpacking trip, is you always want to make sure you have extra water, extra layers. And even if you don't use the extra water, you may come along someone else who may use the water. I had the opportunity through my work at the AMC to get wilderness first aid, so to learn. And sometimes you're in situations that are a little tricky. You could be riding your bike and you get a flat tire and you have to fix it, or you have to phone a friend and get somebody to help. But having these experiences, or even if you're at the farm, you're surrounded by bees. We have other bugs that are on the farm too. You learn, about how to make your way in nature, or if you're going on a journey. And we all know that when you have some of those close call experiences, those make the best stories afterwards. So we certainly told the story of hiking up to Mount Washington in the rain and the fog, and that's a story that myself and my niece will remember for the rest of our life.
That's amazing. Where did you grow up, Kristen?
I actually have lived all over the place. I was born in the Mid-Atlantic in Pennsylvania, but I've spent time on the West Coast, lived abroad briefly. Farmer Fred and I worked on some organic farms overseas, so have moved all over the place. So I've had the opportunity of getting to see a lot of neat places, but I'm an Easterner by heart, as is Farmer Fred, and we just love fall. I think it's one of the best times to get out into nature here in New England before it gets too cold and icy.
I agree. I've been all over the country. I lived in Eastern Mass for a few years in my 20s, but I'm a Western Mass guy, and I've been all over the country, and I always look forward to coming home.
Absolutely. To your point of, we both spent a lot of time in different parts of the country and places with really big nature. I went to graduate school in Montana. I spent a summer working in the Bob Marshall Wilderness, a 1,000,000-acre wilderness south of Glacier National Park. Incredible, beautiful. And we love those big Western landscapes. but we also love places like the Mass Central Rail Trail and our farm and some of the nature spaces around here, the Connecticut River. And so we feel very lucky that our path led us to Western Massachusetts, which has so many nature spaces, so many local businesses that you can support, whether it's going out for a beer or having dinner or lunch. And so and also obviously having all the colleges, the amazing art and culture that we have here in Western Massachusetts. So we feel really lucky that our path led us here.
Yep, this is great. One last question here.
Sure.
What role will conservation and mobility play in helping communities adapt for the future?
Well, I think that having connections to community are the most important thing right now, whether it's things that are happening at the national level or in the world. Being able to have opportunities for folks to get around safely, whether they're biking, walking, or commuting, having local businesses where you know the owners, you support the local business, or places where you meet up with friends. The thing that I think that we can most do right now is support our community, support our neighbors, support the local businesses, be there when people have a need. A couple weeks ago, I was able to participate in the Food Bank of Western Massachusetts, We'll Bike for Food, thinking of all the money that was raised to support folks' ability to be able to get access to fresh local food is so important. So I think that the best thing that we can be doing right now is really investing in our communities and where you have the ability, whether it's financial or volunteering, or really just going to your favorite restaurant and getting a beverage. I think these are some of the best things that we can do right now.
I know one of the things that you and Fred do that really help create the dynamic, unusual, special community of Florence is the tractor parade.
Absolutely. Yes. This last year I had the opportunity to be a judge. And so Fred is part of the Northampton Agricultural Commission. And a few years ago, they started a tractor parade, and it's just so much fun, starting at Smith Voke, and then the tractors go all the way to Look Park. And everyone's so creative in the way they decorate the tractors. I have to tell you, it was really tough to judge the tractors because every single one of them were fantastic. And Farmer Fred and I also dressed up like a polar bear and a reindeer, and we were on the back of Rich Jaski's hay wagon. And it's just so much fun. And I know it's another way that people can show their support of farmers, and it's really just a good time.
Yes, that's great. Thanks for tuning in to Roads Less Traveled with Craig Della Penna. I hope today's episode gave you fresh ideas and inspiration for exploring the unique world of real estate, rail trails, and bike tourism. Be sure to subscribe, like, and share the show so we can reach more trail lovers and real estate enthusiasts like you. Stay connected, stay curious, and I'll see you in 2 weeks with more expert insights and stories from the roads less traveled. Until then, keep exploring those hidden paths and uncovering new opportunities. Thanks.